Yeah, that looks dog shit.
This is Clarence, my 1999 BMW E46. And on this channel, I've been documenting the entire journey of upgrading, modifying, and doing some pretty wild things to the car. In today's video, I'm wrapping up the final part of a two-part series where I complete the custom carbon fiber trunk I've been working on for over 2 years.
So here we are. We're back working on the trunk. If you guys haven't seen my last video, I recommend go checking that one out. In that video, I had shown you the 2-year process from the original start where I sprayed the spray foam on the trunk, which is pretty much a ducktail spoiler that is now built into the original trunk. And then that was the plan for it all along, was to eventually get it carbon fiber, get it lightweight. So what I'm going to do in this video is we're going to be starting the process for the carbon fiber. So we're going to make the mold of it. You know, once we have the mold, we can then start the carbon fiber process, laying it down inside of the mold. We're going to do that on the top and on the bottom side. And I'm really just going to bring you guys along for that. Where it's at right now, it's in a pretty good spot versus from where it started. It's been a long process. Got to continue to clean it up just a little bit. I'm going to put down some more primer. And then I am going to take the trunk off of the car so that way I can start the mold process. I'm going to do that here in just a little bit once I get all the body filler where it needs to be now. Before we can start the whole mold process, there are a few things that I do need to touch up on the trunk that I left out in the last video. One is going to be the emblem. So I just need to go through, put a little more body filler here. And then there's one little wavy part at the very top of the trunk. You guys probably saw that already. So one little wavy part. So I'm going to go through with some body filler, get that a little in order, sand it a little bit, because I just don't want any imperfection showing on the mold, because then it's going to show on the carbon fiber when we pull that out. So spent another 2 days working on this, getting this thing in a good position. I think that it's pretty much done. What I am going to do now, I kind of just going to mask up the rest of the trunk, and then I'm going to go ahead and start painting it. And I am going to use some filler primer just to fill some of the pinholes that I just can't see or that I may have missed. So I'm going to go ahead, spray some filler primer on this. I'm going to sand it down with some 220. You guys will see that process. I'm then going to polish it, but I'm more than likely going to do that off of the car. Right now I'm just going to paint it while it's on the car, and then we'll go from there. So this is pretty much it. It's in a pretty good spot. I've already blown it off, already sanded it down. I went ahead and taped some of this up. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to tape some of this down so it's not just flying everywhere as I put the primer on. But again, we're going to be using a filler primer just to get some of those minor imperfections that I couldn't see or that I just, flat out missed. I'm going to spray 2 to 3 coats of this on top of it, and we're going to see how that turns out. I'm hoping that all of the imperfections that you guys may have seen last time I did this in the first video, I'm hoping a lot of those are not showing on here now. And then I also know that when I do spray this, the contrast between colors is not there at all. So it does make the trunk look like one uniform piece, and it looks really, really good. So I'm gonna go ahead and spray some of this and see what happens. So I want to show you guys kind of where we're at now with it. I just recently laid down the primer, so it's still a little wet and there's still a few little wet spots here, but I did want to show you kind of where we're at. I did lay down 2 very thick coats of that filler primer, and you can see it did cover up a lot of the small imperfections. Now, as you can see, there are still a few that I've noticed as I was laying down the primer. I didn't expect it to be perfect. And some of those I was actually already dealing with from the first video, if you guys have seen that one, such as like this whole area over here. Just a few, I don't even know, a few imperfections that are sticking through. Again, it is still wet. As you can see, there's still wet spots everywhere. I just did this. So I'm gonna let it dry. I'm gonna come back to it and really just patch up some of these small holes, these small little imperfection areas. But as you guys can see, this is pretty much what it's going to look like, as one solid color. There's no contrast between the original trunk color and the spoiler from all the body filler and all the pinhole filler and stuff. This is what it looks like as one color. And quite frankly, I like it a lot. I think it looks really good. I think it looks really aggressive if I back out. You can see the entire thing. So really just picture this as a darker trunk, and that's really what we're going to be looking like in terms of carbon fiber. Alright, so this is pass number 3 on the spoiler, so it does look a lot smoother, a lot less imperfections. However, there still are a few. As you guys can see, this whole little line which this whole issue right here is just fiberglass underneath, just not being even, because the top was by itself. I cut the bottom for this little seam right here, this line. I cut the bottom and then fiberglass the bottom upward. And so this right here is just fiberglass sticking over the original fiberglass, and it's just not even. So what I'm doing is I'm just sanding it down with 200, this whole little section right here, and then I'm putting glazing putty on top of it. I'm sanding that down with 200, then 320, then 400, and then going back over it with the primer. And so this is my third pass at doing that all over the spoiler, and it is slowly but surely making a difference. Every single time there's less imperfections. So yeah, this thing's getting closer and closer. As soon as I do get all the imperfections out of it, I am going to take it off of the car itself, completely remove it off the car. I'm going to wet sand it off of the car so I can get the corners too, because right now those are just all taped up, and I'm sure there's a few things I need to go over as well. But yeah. What I'm going to do now that it's in a really good spot, I'm going to go ahead and take it off. That way the weather's not, beating down on it or anything like that. I'm going to go ahead and take it off, take off a lot of this stuff that's connected, like the wires. And then I'm going to go ahead and put it in the shed. I'm going to go in there, I'm going to wet sand it. And then from there, if there's any imperfections, I'll try to touch those up a little bit. But from there, we're going to go ahead and start the mold process, making the mold for the top and the bottom. And then once we have that done, we're on to the carbon fiber. So we're going to go ahead and start that. All right, so I already went through, removed the bulbs on the trunk light. So now there's a 10 millimeter in here. Go ahead. And remove the 10. And I shouldn't have to remove it all the way. Go to push this in. I'm not super worried about these lights because they're going to be replaced anyway. So there we go. See, this thing is caked with tons of dirt and body filler, and you should be able to see that. All right. So got this off, and so we've got this side left. We'll do the same thing. Take our 10. Loosen up this little inside piece. And then obviously, this side wants to give me a little bit more trouble. You go ahead and remove this tape. I think it will be an issue. Bam. That's the other side officially out. Okay. So we've got both trunk lights, the lid lights, we've got both of those out. Everything's out except for the wiring over here. I think there's one little tab that's being stuck where it bends. And so I was hoping that taking these off, I'd be able to see it or feel it. And it looks like I can. Two things I noticed after looking at the trunk on the underneath side. So the top side I already knew about the imperfections because I'm putting a spoiler up there. But on the underneath side, it looks like it actually was dented as well. So right up in here, which is in line with where the dent was previously that the previous owner had caused. So this is all dented right here as well as right here. Now it's not too bad, but it is bad enough that the dent would be on the underneath side of the mold. So I need to figure out what I'm going to do here. Either try to hammer it a little more, hammer it to be straighter, or just kind of leave it and say, hey, it's a one of one unique kind of thing. I managed to get the entire wiring harness out of the trunk. So this is everything from the latch to the lights to the actual locking mechanism on the trunk. It's all out, it's all here. Really the only thing left to do is actually take this off with the car, put it in the shed, and start working on it. So that's what we're gonna do now. And this one? It's heavy.
Is it heavy?
Yeah, it is.
I thought
heavy.
you had big muscle.
As you guys just saw, trunk is officially off. Trunk is now in the building. So now is the time where it starts to get serious in terms of making the mold, making the carbon fiber. And I've described the process a few times now, but yeah, it's a big step. But we thought about taking off the trunk, just to free up and allow me to get to tight crevices, such as the corners that are hard to reach when it's open or closed. From here on, really what we're going to be doing is just starting the wet sanding process, getting that thing to its absolute smoothest surface as possible. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and start making that mold. So I went over it with the 320, wet sanded with 320 all over the trunk, and it actually looks really good. It's pretty smooth. There's still some rough spots from like the media from the filler primer. I'm not sure what it exactly did, but still some like little tacky spots on it. Like they're kind of rough. And then what it did is it also showed like the very few imperfections that are actually still on it. From the smooth parts. So we've got like a few pinholes, which I've already had my fair share of those, so that's not going to be too much of an issue. Overall though, it looks really good. It's starting to come together. It's all one solid color. So yeah, it's looking pretty good. Now it's still wet. I think I'm going to go back over it with the 320 just to get some of this, like I said, the media from the filler primer that's stuck on here in areas like this. But I think I'm going to do it with the smaller brush rather than the block, because I know that this is a little wavy still, so it's not all flush. The block is not getting into like the very small like little indents that I know are still on it. I'm just not going to get rid of those. It was already embedded into the foam that's underneath. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this. So again, this is the little smaller one. So I'll just go through and get into like the little indents that are on the trunk, and then from there should be pretty good. I'll go ahead and start to patch some of these up once we get done with the wet sanding. almost done with it. Nearing the end, I did spray a little bit of gloss lac on it. That really hid a lot of the imperfections that I've been working on. However, it did bring to light a few of the other imperfections. Now, I am really tired of sanding this thing. I think I've realistically probably spent 200 to 300 hours working, sanding, grinding this thing out. Honestly, probably longer, closer to 1,000 hours that I've spent on the spoiler. So the closer that we get to it, the happier that I am. There's a few things that I do need to go through and do. You guys may have seen when I was taking videos after I spray painted this, there was like this weird little, I'm not even sure what to call it. It was like this weird little tranche that was really just kind of sitting in like the middle of it. Now I knew that there was a crack already. I put some paint, some tape over it, filled it, did as much as I could to it, but unfortunately just the weather got to the foam underneath, and so I'm kind of having to pick up those pieces. Where we're at with it. So this is before I start the wet sanding with the 600. You can kind of see there's a few little lumpy spots. This is actually what I've been working on, is like this whole centerpiece. I think what happened is when I tilted this up and it's just kind of been sitting here for a week or two, I guess some of the underneath foam had just slid forward and caused a bulge. So I've been going through trying to fix that, because I know if I leave it here and then I make the mold, it's going to show through the carbon fiber.
Take a quick commercial break and we'll be right back.
Hungry for both steak and shrimp?
Doctor, give me the news. I got a vacation loving too.
Welcome back to Talladega, where the long one continues.
Just went through, just taped up the entire perimeter of the trunk, and now I taped it up simply because I have to hot glue this little board. I'm not exactly sure what this is. I got it at Lowe's, part number 74000. That's a Smooth Pro 2x2 white. Now I've already cut this piece, so it's somewhat flexible. And again, I've already taped up the entire perimeter of the trunk, and that allows me to hot glue this to the bottom so that we can make the flange. Just like that. And then now that we have the flange, there's going to be a small little gap between the flange, this little board, and then where the trunk is. I then went and got some General Electric silicone, but you take a little bead of that silicone, you put it in between the two once this is stuck with the hot glue, put it in between, and then you pretty much just make sure that's not sitting on the trunk. Now that is safe for the gel coat or the tooling coat that I use to make the mold. So really, just going to start that process. We're going to go all around the trunk, making a flange, and it'll all start to make sense, but we're good to go, you know, ready to actually start making the mold. Feels great. Like I said, I've been working on this for so long. We're just one step closer to actually getting this thing done. Alright, so starting the mold making process, I need to start by making the flanges to go, again, all around the perimeter of it. So, like I said, I got this little roofing tile board from Lowe's. We're going to go ahead and start with this. It's pretty malleable. What I've been doing is I'm taking the heat gun to it, just kind of putting some light heat on it so that way it allows it to bend a little bit more, because this is not perfectly flat. It's got a little concave to it. So just heating it up, and then I'm going to go ahead and hot glue the entire edge right here. I'm just going to stick to that tape that I did last night. So I'm going to go ahead and do that all around and see how it goes. I did a pretty unique little thing here. I just took the board, took the heat gun to it, and essentially just slowly put some weight here in the center of it with the heat on it. And it was able to actually bend, and then now that it's not, it's pretty hard. So this is going to be super, super useful for these little curves here. They're not the same on either side, so that's really nice. So now that these are I can get these in shape without having to cut up a whole bunch of little pieces and try to fill those. I can simply just heat this up, massage it to the shape that we need. Now the only issue with this one is I started this one all the way up here, so it's going to be half of the curve, and then I'm going to bend it back into here. I'm really thinking, at least on the other side, I could just kind of throw this one on the other side, and I'm thinking about just putting this up to it and then just heating it up as long as possible, and then just start shaping it that way. But I don't want to hurt the spoiler in any way, so I don't know, I'll see. So here we are. Flanges are completely on the spoiler. So flanges are completely on it. What I'm gonna go ahead and do now, I'm gonna wipe it down, and then I'm going to use some of this. So this is what I was talking about. This is the General Electric silicone. So it's 100% waterproof. It's for windows and doors typically. But what you can do is you can lay down a small little bead. I'll just cut off a very small piece of this tip. Lay down a very small bead in between the flange board and the trunk itself. So I'm going to lay that down so that way there's no mechanical lock between the carbon fiber and then the flange, because if there's no edge to it, then it would just kind of dip down and then get stuck. So we want to avoid that. I'm going to go ahead and start that process, and you guys will see that.
As you can see, so I laid down the little bead. Now this isn't nearly what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a little more malleable. This is more liquid. So I thought it was going to be a little more rubbery. I know that it probably feels that way after it dries. But the issue, one of the issues I'm having is because I cut the thing so, you had to cut it so far back, the tip of the nozzle, is that I can't get into these really, really tight crevices without getting onto the spoiler or the trunk itself. So you can see like this where it's darker, that's all silicone that's just on the spoiler. My concern is it's gonna mess up the mold. Like right here, it's super thick. It's all on the corner just because of how tight that little gap is. And I can't really wipe this off. I've been using a rag. I've been using a clean rag to try to wipe this all off, but it just moves and stays, and it's very waxy. Like right here, I try to put some down, and really the only the benefit of this, what you're trying to do is, in terms of the way I understand it, is you're just trying to have like a nice little clean edge and seal all holes, like all gaps. This gives you a close-up of the flange, but you're just trying to fill the little gap between where the flange is and then where the spoiler is. This little seam that goes in between. You're just trying to fill those in. And unfortunately, I think this might be messing it up, so.
Got that all around the edges. I did go through, I took a little Q-tip, and once the silicone gets somewhat hard, so after, I don't know, 15 minutes or so, it's not as liquidy, so you can move it a little bit. So I took the Q-tip and I would just fill some of the little spots where gel coat could seep through. So I went through, did that around the entire perimeter of the trunk, so every single bead that I laid down. Now it's not the cleanest, but I do think it's going to do the job, or at least I hope it's going to do the job. Again, this is a live and learn kind of thing. So that's it. I'm going to go ahead and clean up this mess a little bit, and then we're going to go ahead and start with the gel coat, and then from there, we're just going to see what happens. But I am excited, so yeah, let's go ahead and clean this thing up. So we got it done, got the place cleaned up a little bit. So now that I have room, got a table here, got a table here, just wanted to clean it up. I don't really like working in a messy area, but I'm also limited on time. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to wipe it down with isopropyl alcohol, wipe down the entire thing, including the flanges, including the silicone once it's dry. Once we have it all wiped down, I'm going to go ahead and start the PVA. So the quick release, all of that stuff, got to put it on the flanges, put it on the trunk. And this just really helps make sure that the tooling coat does not stick to the trunk when we go to lift it off. Alrighty, so now that all the silicone is dry, now that I've wiped down the isopropyl alcohol, I sprayed it off with some just some compressed air. The next step to making the mold is going to be using some Partol paste. So the Partol paste is essentially a wax that I have to rub around it. What I'm going to use is just a microfiber towel. I'm going to dip some in here. I'm going to put a thin, even coat all across everything, including the flanges and the spoiler. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I think it calls for, I believe it calls for 30 to 60 minutes between each coat. And then you want to come and you want to buff it off with another towel every like 10 minutes or 10 minutes after you apply it. So lay down a thin coat. I'm going to wait about 10 minutes, buff off the excess wax. It'll get all hazy and stuff like that, buff that off. And then I'll come back about 20 minutes later, apply another coat. I'll repeat that process probably 5 to 6 times, I believe is what it calls for. So we're going to go ahead and start that process. This is step number 1 in the mold making process. So let's go. This is the Partol paste. This is what it looks like. So I'm just going to take this microfiber towel, dip some in here. I'm not sure how much to get. I think less is more in this case. So I'm just going to get a little bit, start rubbing it on there and kind of see how it goes. So let's do that. We can do. Kind of came out as a glob, as you guys can see. I guess I'm just going to smear this around. There we go. Yeah, so I guess I'm just going to smear it around. I called for a thin layer. I guess I'm just going to massage this all in. Really just going to repeat this process over and over. I'm hoping the time-lapse caught that, but had a slight scare. I had this doormat underneath, so this is like an outdoor like garden holder, the thing that's holding the trunk up. So I had a doormat sitting on it to protect the trunk so it wasn't metal on metal, because this thing is like cast iron or something like that. So I didn't want the underneath side getting scratched up while I'm doing all the moving, whole bunch of the moving parts, you know, waxing on, waxing off. Mat under here started to slip a little bit, and the trunk started to go with it, so I had to catch it. And the difficult part about it is there's flanges along all of the edges, so there's not much to grab onto, but luckily I was able to stop it from the top. I had some fingerprints on it, and you can feel how slick the wax is, so it's kind of could have been a disastrous situation, but was able to get it caught up. So right now I'm just waiting for the wax to dry. Once it dries, I'm gonna give it about 10 to 15 minutes. It takes quite a while to wax this thing, because again, it is a big part. So I'm gonna give it 10 to 15 minutes. I'm gonna use my other microfiber towel. I'm gonna buff it off, and then repeat that process 5 to 6 more times. And yeah, we'll be ready for the next step, which is PVA. And I'll show you guys that whole process. Alright, so just a quick update. This is the 4th coat of wax, or part all paste. Simply waiting for that to dry. Once that does dry, go ahead and buff that out. I've had to speed it up. I did say 10 minutes originally, because that's how long I thought it took to let it dry and try to buff it out, but it's gotten really hard, and the rag will get caught on it trying to buff it out, and it'll leave like a slight haze. So I've been speeding it up a little bit, giving it about 5 minutes. With how big the trunk is, I've had to do it in sections. So I started with the front, and then I'll move over to the back. So I've been doing it that way, just to kind of make it easy. But this past one, I did do the entire trunk. So again, this is the 4th one. I've got one more. I wasn't gonna record the entire thing, because it's just, you know, rinse and repeat. So I've got one more. Once I'm done with the 4th one, I'm gonna give this about an hour for everything to set. And then from there, I'm gonna move on to the PVA, and you guys will see that whole process. So for the second step of the mold making process, we've got the PVA. I got this off Amazon. This is what we're gonna put over the wax now that the wax is completely dry. Now, I'm gonna be honest, this looked way bigger in the pictures, but this should be plenty, because we're not putting a whole bunch on. On top of that, I also got some foam brushes. So we're gonna put some into this cup, dip the foam brush into it, and then we're going to apply some long, even coats along the spoiler. And there's some other stuff in there, so we're going to go ahead and start that process. see how this goes. All right, so we've got our little PVA in here. I'm gonna just dip the tip of the foam brush into it. I'm gonna start on the flanges because I'm not 100% sure how this is gonna react. I know I don't want to drip in and, you know, all over the place. Been roughly 2 hours since I laid down the PVA. I did 2 coats of the PVA. I let it sit for 20 minutes in between, and then it was still a little tacky around the flanges, so I let it sit, just kind of let it sit there for quite a while. So now we're on the final step of the mold making, or last to final step of the mold making, and this is where the tooling coat or the gel coat comes in. I got this from Fiberglass Warehouse. I found it on Amazon. It's like $100 for a gallon. That should be plenty for the trunk. The trunk is pretty big, especially with all the flanges on it. I don't have a lot of time with the temperature. Probably have 20 to 30 minutes before it starts to cure. So I'm gonna work kind of quickly, but you guys will see this process. But knowing me, I'll probably be slightly off. And because it's cold, I'm gonna stir it a little slow. Try to get all the air bubbles out. No point rushing it. I'm just gonna get a nice little coat on here. It's a little runny, but we want to build this up to be pretty thick. I'm gonna try to get it on here pretty quickly. Last thing I want is this thing tooling up on us while we're in the process of doing it. So, and if I run out, I can always make more. So this is with the first of the gel coat applied across the entire thing. Looks pretty good. There's a few spots where I do need to go back over it. If I'm not mistaken, I think I need to wait until this starts to tack up a little bit, and then I'll put a thin coat. Like for example, in the front. So in the front, as you can still see, there's some color-ish showing through. I think that's just the brush strokes. You can still see a little bit here and a little bit here, and then some up there as well. So we don't want any of that, because if that's too thin, when we got to pull this thing off, it could just leave holes and tears and stuff like that. And there's a few places where I put it on pretty thick, right around here. Now I know this looks terrible because this is the silicone little edges. You can see had a field day with the foam board. But this is what it looks like with the first layer of gel coat. Pretty excited. Believe it or not, this is actually the easiest thing that I've done on the spoiler. It's just painting on some gel coat. Now the stuff is strong. I'm going to turn the fan on and let this cure for the next few hours. I am curious to see how this mold's going to gonna come out. Because if it comes out as this, you know, then we're on to something big. So it's been about 2 weeks since I put down the tooling coat or the gel coat. So it's had plenty of time to cure. It's fully cured, so I don't have to worry about any rising or anything like that. I've seen people who put down fiberglass, try to readjust it while it's still somewhat tacky, and that ends up causing some real issues in the mold. So I didn't even want to deal with that. I ended up leaving anyway, so it all worked out for the better. So the last step in making the mold is going to be to lay down the fiberglass. This just gives it some rigidity, some strength, and it's actually going to allow me to do more things, like get the underneath side, so I can redo this whole process on the underneath side. So I went out and got a whole bunch of these little fiberglass cloths. Now this is what I use to support the spoiler itself. They work really well, and they're cleaner than like the mat. So I went out and got these. These are going to be like a base coat of fiberglass. I'm going to put these down everywhere, and then I also have some actual cloth. So this is like 420 grams or something like that. 24, I don't know what this is, but I got it off eBay. I'm gonna interchange these out, you know, do one layer of these, do one layer of this, and just repeat that process until it's pretty stiff. And then on top of that, I also went to Hobby Lobby. I also got some dowels. So these are 1/4-inch dowels. There's 12 of them. I'll just break these up and embed them into the fiberglass as I'm laying it down. Probably do it on like the 3rd layer of fiberglass. That just gives it some extra rigidity because the trunk is pretty big and heavy. I don't want, you know, this thing falling and it just causing an issue. So I'm also going to embed some of these in there. Other than that, we really have everything that we need. Alright, so it's not the prettiest of molds, but it is going to work. In this case, I did put down 2 layers of the thin fiberglass, some of this thinner, some of the little thin packet ones. I laid down 2 of those, and then I went over it with the matte, the heavy grain fiberglass. I went over it with that, did that twice, and then between the 3rd and the 4th layer is when I put the dowels down. Just kind of fiberglass that was in there, laid a layer over top of it. I'm gonna let this harden up overnight, give it about 12 to 18 hours. I'll come back on here tomorrow. If it's hard, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it around, flip it upside down, and then we're gonna start the exact same process, but for the underneath side. I got every single flange board off of the gel coat. Didn't do too bad of a job. Now in some areas it does look extremely rough. Really just really just this side over here is where the worst of it is. If I come over here on this side, you can see this is a lot cleaner. I guess I learned my lesson from the other side. And then you can see like where some of the silicone is still embedded. And then you can still see some like little chips in it. And that's kind of the story all throughout. Where I did large bits of flange board, like for example, the top up here, and then at the bottom, it looks really good. There's no holes, there's no cracks. This is the tape. So I put the tape underneath the entire perimeter of the trunk. And then there's super glue, as you can see from like areas right here. So I just super glued this flange board. To the tape so that I didn't have to sit here and try to like scrape it off of just bare metal, like right here. And so it left this entire perimeter super clean. So all I would really have to do now is just go through, pick the silicone out. I need to go ahead and get the flange board on here. And then I also need to do some research to see what it's going to take here, because this, I'm not sure what happened. I don't know if I just didn't put enough on here. And then in the meantime, I'm going to go through and address these holes that I have all throughout this underneath side. Just put some tape over this and then outline the holes that are on this side. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna try to rip these off as one piece. I've already went through with a Sharpie and outlined the line. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna cut this to shape, make sure this is same size and everything like that. I'm gonna go ahead and transfer it over to some flange material and then stick it in here, and hopefully it just fills this hole without having to super glue it and try to get my hands in here, because that's gonna be difficult. It was difficult on the other side, especially around the tail light area. Alrighty, so two things I wanted to show you guys here. So one is the dents. So these are the dents that I was referring to on the underneath side. This lines up perfectly with the dents, which started this whole process. I'm not going to do anything with those. You know, they're not too big of a deal. You're not going to be able to see them. And I'm not the biggest metal work kind of guy. And so this is something that I would have to learn and try to do all that. So I'm not going to do that. Dents are coming with the carbon fiber. It is what it is. Now, one other thing is I was talking about the plates of metal that are in between the outside shell and the inside shell. And that's this. So for example, this is where the trunk locking mechanism goes. So it needs to bolt to this. And then also this is where the tail light sits. So I can't just put a piece of this flange board. I can't just put it here, because then we're just gonna have a hole and there's not gonna be this little piece in between. So I have to figure out a way to mask all this up right here. And then also these lips that are underneath. Officially done with masking everything up, filling all the holes that were on the underneath side. Now it's not the prettiest, and I did cheat a little bit. I did use a ton of packing tape, really, because the packing tape is something I can put PVA over, I can put wax over, and the tooling coat is not going to stick to it. So I did use a lot of that, especially on the top section, like up here. And then on the underneath side, as you guys can see, so I used some little cutouts, the same flange board. So I used that, just cut it to shape. I do want to show you guys one unique thing that I did here, and that is on the taillights. So on the taillights, I made pretty much a custom box. You know, heated up the little flange board, molded it to shape. I have one here, I have one here. So I really just made a little custom box. So this will allow me to use the trunk latch box. Now it's not the prettiest. I put tons of silicone all around it just to seal up a lot of the edges. Now that we have that, we should be good to go ahead and put carbon fiber in here once we have the mold of it. I'm not as worried about the backside simply because I'm not going to be able to see it. That was one of the reasons that I was okay putting the packing tape, because I know that once we start doing the mold, you may be able to see some fine lines from the tape through the mold. but most of the places where the holes are, that little carpet from the inside is covering that up. So I'm not extremely worried about that. And then also I have some pretty unique things that I'm going to try to do on the backside. It's going to be a little bit different than the top. Way more worried about the top because you can always see the top, whereas the underneath side, I'm not super worried about it. So what I'm going to do now, we're going to go ahead and start the process for the mold making. So going, 1 through 4 or whatever it is, PVA, wax. Yeah, from there, pretty much just going to start it. So I'm not going to record all of that. So you guys already saw that on the top side. I am going to kind of just skim through it a little bit. I'll show you like bits and pieces of what I'm doing, just to keep you up to speed. Other than that though, we're pretty much good to go ahead and start making this mold. I mentioned that I wanted to try a few different things on the bottom side of the trunk, just because it's not as visible. You're not really going to see it unless I open the trunk. And then the carpets that was sitting inside where the little tool thing goes, that's going to be covering pretty much majority of the holes on the trunk. And then you get the latches, so I'm not too worried about it. And so I did want to try a few different things. One is going to be embossing the M logo into the sides of the trunk, and I'll show you guys where I'm putting those. Essentially, I took some of that flange board. You guys are seeing it in reverse, but I took some of that flange board, or I print off 2 M logos. I cut those out and then put it on top of the board and then cut those out. Or I went through and just made little divots to separate the 3 lines. Now it's not going to be colored, it is going to be carbon fiber, but it's going to be embossed on the underneath side of the trunk. Spread it around all on the back side as much as we can. It's extremely cold out, so I'm gonna do this kind of quick. All right. Bam. So there you go. So it'll be a slightly embossed little M logo on the underneath side of the trunk. So when you open it, it's the only time you're actually going to see it. And I think it's going to be a cool little touch, cool little unique thing, considering it is going to be carbon fiber. Again, it was just one of those unique things that I wanted to try, just because it's on the underneath side of the trunk, so I can get a little creative. Now there is one other thing that I am going to try to do that's going to be different than the top. We'll talk about that once we start the whole carbon fiber process. Not anything crazy, but it is going to be different than the top side of the trunk. Now I do plan on painting the top side, just because I don't want the car to be a whole bunch of different colors. I may leave it carbon fiber while we're still doing body work. On the car. For example, I still need to figure out the whole over fender or wide body on it to match the M3 bumper that we have. Alrighty, so this is it. This is the last thing that we're going to do in terms of the bottom side. I just put down the final layer of wax. We're going to go ahead and use the gel coat. I'm going to go ahead and start on the gel coat. I'm going to start applying that. Show you guys that in the time lapse. I'm going to go ahead and start applying the gel coat, and then let that harden up. Once that's hard, I'm going to go ahead and start applying the fiberglass. I'm just going to speed through that whole process, but you will see it. We did get the tooling coat completely on it. I am going to, on the bottom side, I am going to do two coats, just because I can notice from just the flanges on the first side, they are a bit soft. Gel coat does like to pull off kind of easily. That was one of the reasons that I did not actually sand down the bead of silicone right around it, because I feel like it would have just ripped a hole because of how thin the underneath side is. So I am curious to see what it's going to look like when we actually rip it off. One other thing that I didn't also think about as I was laying down the tooling coat is we are actually going to have some mechanical lock between the mold itself and then also the trunk, and that's going to stem from the M logos that I put down on the trunk. Because they were on both sides, I don't know if you guys can see it, but because they're on both sides, the tooling coat comes down onto it and then on the underneath side, and then comes out where the flange is. So it does it on both sides. And so you essentially have to either bend them over or just kind of rip off the M along with the, when we rip off the mold, which I think will be fine if they come off without messing up the tooling coat. So either way, I'm gonna let this dry. I'm gonna let this tack up a little bit so I don't hurt the underneath side of the tooling coat and doesn't mess up the, where the carbon fiber is gonna go. I'm gonna let that dry, come back out here. I'll put another layer on, and then we'll go ahead and start with the fiberglass. Should be good to go. So this is it. This was the last layer of fiberglass that I was going to put on the underneath side of the mold. I'm super excited. This has been quite a while in the making. Now, I know we're not done. I know we still have to start the entire process for carbon fiber, which is a whole thing in itself. But in terms of the molds, we are officially done. So by far the worst attempt of a mold I think I've ever seen. And I've seen some pretty bad ones, on YouTube and stuff like that. There's people trying it, some amateurs. And I have to say this is the worst one I've ever seen in my life. Yeah, that looks dog shit. At this point, I'm in the video. So I'm gonna do some research, figure out what I can do, if I can do anything to try to fix both of them. They really both need some work. I was extremely upset, extremely frustrated, and the spoiler is actually now damaged because I straight up just threw it. So I absolutely just threw the spoiler. If you plan on doing this or doing something like this, I'd recommend don't. But if you do and you want to do it, then I would recommend you make a multi-part mold, 2 to 3 part mold. That would have been ideal here. I was getting mechanical lock on both the top side and the bottom side. When it comes to the bottom, luckily we still did get this little thing right here, which is the trunk latch. So we got this. We did get all the grooves, so I know exactly where to cut out. My only concern is there's absolutely nothing here on this right here, and this is still somewhat moving. Top side looks significantly better. So what I think happened was, one, there's not as many little angles. We really just had the corners that I had to worry about, which I really had to worry about those. and then the logo. Those are really like the only crevices that we had to really dig down into, you know, to get this thing in shape. So this does look a lot better than the upside, or than the back, the underneath side. So there you have it. Those are top and underneath side of the mold. They're definitely not perfect, and they're definitely going to require some work, but I think I can fix them. I think I can make it work, no matter, you know, how pissed off I got. I do believe I can make them work, so I am looking forward to it. If you guys want to see how I end up fixing these molds in the future, feel free to leave it in the comments, you know, if you actually want to see it. If not, I'm just going to skip right to the fun stuff, which is the carbon fiber. I don't even really want to do the fixing of the molds, but it's going to need to be done. I've worked way too long, way too hard on the spoiler itself to just completely throw it away because the molds look terrible. Again, so these are some of the worst molds I've ever seen. But yeah, we're going to end it here.